Rav Nachum Rabinovich Olav Shalom was a chassid that lived in Yerushalayim. He was a Lubavitcher. His story is also interesting. He was connected with the Belzer Rebbe, connected with outside the world of Chabad in a significant way. Now he was also apparently close to Rav Zevin. Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin was one of the greatest Gaonim of the previous generation. He wrote many Sfarim, Sipurei Chassidim. He's one of them that he is most renowned for as the founder and director and main editor of the Encyclopedia Talmudis, the encyclopedia on the Gemara. If you just open it and look at it, it is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. The bekiyas, the clarity, the depth. And he wrote many groundbreaking Sfarim. He was a Lubavitcher. He actually came to Lubavitch not through Lubavitch. He came to Lubavitch through Rabbi Shmayahu, a copist, which still existed. Rabbi Shmayahu, one of the Tzemach Tzedek's children. Copist, but eventually didn't survive, and was very close with the Frierdiker Rebbe, worked with the Frierdiker Rebbe in Russia, and had a tremendous correspondence with the Rebbe, which is really, really beautiful. Just reminded of one thing, that when the Rebbe instructed Rabbi to make, which he started to do, the encyclopedia for Chassidus, what's it called, Sefer Erchim. So he writes to the Rebbe that he saw the first volume, whatever. It's fantastic, but it's too elaborate. If you want for the general public, it's just. He writes back to him, no, what should you do? He's defending Rabbi that Chassidus is so gishmak that just keeps on expanding. You're right. In theory, it's going to be more concise, to be more public appeal, but that's the nature once into it, and that's also mind-blowing work. Still, in its early stages. I'm talking about the exact video, the Sefer Erchim. Anyway, so here's the story. Just a bit of intro to Rav Zevin, who was this extraordinary Gaon. So he tells Rav Nachman Rabinovich like this: when I first met the Frierdiker Rebbe, working with him on the Avodas HaTziburis, community work in Russia, strengthening Yiddishkeit in Russia. This is he was already out of Russia, 1934, 35. So he would have been then in Riga. So I was sitting, he says, with the Frierdiker Rebbe in his room. And we started after, it was Tisha B'Av. Did I say Tisha B'Av? It was Tisha B'Av. After Kinnis, and we sat till Mincha, long summer day. And our whole discussion and the planning and the work was essentially about the matzav of Eden in Russia and what has to be done and how to do and continue the work, etc. This gives us an inkling of how close he was to the Frierdiker Rebbe and what level the Frierdiker Rebbe is treating him as a fellow public servant. Just to tell, the Rebbe appointed him later as the head of Rabbi. The Rebbe started Rabbanei Chabad of Eretz Yisrael, and he was appointed as its head. Back to the story. So Matzoi Tisha B'Av, I was we ate at the table. And amongst them, joined us was the Ramash, the Rebbe, the son-in-law. The next day, before he was to leave by train, and so was I, so the Frierdiker Rebbe says to me that the son of the Yekaterinoslav Rov, that's a Blavik, meaning is being suggested as a chassid. It was quasi engaged in, and Savita says to me, "It looks like you're going on the same journey." He says, "Do me a favor, check him out. Check out the Blavik son that is being proposed for my daughter." So after the train ride, he writes a letter, the Reb Zevin, to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he says that he wasn't so amazed at the great Goines in Torah of the Ramash And the fact that every Indian that he discussed with him, he was completely a baki mufla, wondrously versed. He wasn't shocked because he had heard already that the intended son-in-law was a big gon in Torah, so he heard about that. But what he was so impressed was his Yiras Shamayim. And here's an illustration. The Rebbe cleverly kind of declined, got out of joining him at the meal. Now, the food that they had was given over from the Fik Rebbe's house, gave them the sandwiches. It was bread with something. It was sandwich, bread, and something. Now, obviously, there's no question of the kashrus. So I was wondering why the Rebbe is not going to join me in the meal. Until I realized that there was some tiny little problem with the Kalif and Atilas Yadayim. Not a problem pi'aloch at all. It's a chumrah of a chumrah. But in the Rebbe's profound humility and Yiras Shamayim, he avoided washing his hands because the meal was primarily bread. And he says, I realized that. He didn't say, but it was obvious only because I've gone, like Reb Zevin understood there was some shitta somewhere that's brought that this was an imperfection. So he says, I realized. And that's what he writes to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Best part of the story is this. He says to Nachum Rabinovich, to whom he told the story, he says, do you think for a moment that the Frierdiker Rebbe needed my haskama on the Rebbe's his future son-in-law? He simply wanted I should know who he is. He never came to America. This was his only encounter. And there, that created the bond and the connection and the work on behalf, and et cetera, et cetera. That was the point of that whole request.